two people that have been in startups in globally that come from the United States are Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. We know about those, Amazon and Facebook. People come in with a fantasy that I am going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos.
What is that illusion that the startup world has created around us that we are not understanding yet?
Not everybody should be an entrepreneur, but if you are going to be one, then understand that it's not going to come easy, and that is a common mistake. Easy is not in the rule book. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. Your sleep patterns, your life, everything is disrupted. I am not a highly money motivated entrepreneur. I don't wake up with a greed side of me. When you're creating something, create it with other people in mind and not with you in mind. Nothing makes up for hard work.
Oh, I'm a firm believer of that. And I work like an ass at times. Mr. Narayan Murthy said that you need to work for 70 hours. And when he made that statement, there was so much of turbulence in the corporate world. And my team member said, hey, Gaurav, what's your take on work life? I said, work life is a bullshit concept.
But when you're with your spouse and you're with your children, be with your spouse and children. When you're at work, be at work.
Have you experienced the impermanence of life?
I don't think I've experienced that life is useless. That's almost a sign of depression, a phrase of depression. My youngest son took his life 8 years ago at the University of Montana. He was a sophomore and he was on the road of depression. It's a horrible thing. I think you're always going to be a victim of this loss. How you choose to be a victim is up to you, but you will be a victim in some kind.
Hey, Elliot, thank you so much. Such a pleasure having you here. Finally, you are here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Gaurav.
I don't know if I've asked this question ever in the past from any of my guests, but would love to ask you. What does Elliot mean? When I heard this name, I was quite intrigued and I wanted to ask you this question. What does it mean?
So Elliot is a very British name, even though there's no English blood in me that I'm aware of. But it goes back to the name Eliezer, which was actually Moses' son in the Old Testament of the Bible. And it means son of God.
Got it.
I was once more religious than I am now. I'm not as religious today. And I never thought myself in any particular light that was blessed, not blessed, son of God, not. It's a name at the end of the day. What you do and your actions in life are way more important than your name in life.
Oh, I'm a firm believer of that. In fact, some time back, I was leading a workshop and this gentleman continued to call me Saurav. Out of 3 days workshop, he continued to call me Saurav. After 1.5 days, one of the fellow participants interfered and interrupted him. He said, would you mind calling him Gaurav? He asked me, what's your name? I said, people call me Gaurav. He said, how come you did not correct me? I said, how does that matter? A name is just a name.
Yes.
And in few of the best books that I've read, people say that it's very disrespectful not to remember people's name. It's very disrespectful to call somebody with a different name. And in my mind, I believe it's just an identification that we have. Of course, it's very important to have an identification. It's important to have an identity in the three-dimensional world that we are a part of. But if by mistake somebody is calling me with some other name, does it really matter? Should I take it personally? Should I take it on my ego? Is it a disrespect? So Elliot, just out of curiosity, I personally believe that the way we are nurtured, the way we are taken care of in the initial phase of our life helps us become who we become. I'm just wondering, if you were to look at your life, what is the impact of your parents onto you? What is it that you've learned from them that continue to drive your life today as well?
Gaurav, that's a great question because we talk about family so much, and I'm to my core value, I'm a family-centric person. And I was very fortunate to have two very loving parents. I grew up in New Jersey, United States, in a blue collar type of home, middle class blue collar, we call that. My dad was born in 1915. He was part of the United States' greatest generation, the World War II generation. And he had a work ethic that shamefully, the new generation just doesn't understand, but that generation only understood it so well. And that is, work is life and life is work, and take care of your family first. That's your number one job, is to take care of your family. To get their finances in place and get their security in place. That's what you need to take care of first. And so I have that little voice from my dad that says, nothing makes up for hard work. Nothing makes up for hard work. And then my mother was born in Europe, and she unfortunately was part of World War II on the horrible side. And she was in the Auschwitz Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. And she was liberated by the Russians and then came to the United States, where she met my father. And her thing was, you can always do better. So when I was growing up, if I got a 90 or an A- on a test, she would ask me, how many people got A's? You can do it too. And if I got an A, she would say, did anybody get 100 and an A+? And I would say, sure, this person got it, that person. Well, then you could do that too. And then when I got an A+ and I got a perfect score, she would say, well done, of course. You put the effort in, and that's what you get for it. And so in my mind, I have these little voices, I call them my schizophrenia voices, the ones that talk to me all the time. One is saying, you can do better, which is the driver at work. I could do better on Monday than I did on Sunday. I could do better on Wednesday than I did Monday. I think about that all the time, including this morning when I came in early to work. I could do better. What's on my desk that I can improve upon? And then my dad saying to me, are you working to your best? Are you working at 100% capacity, or can you put some more effort in to improve yourself? And so I'm in a constant, never-ending source of improvement, constant, never-ending source of trying to do better.
This is really interesting, Elliot. You are an entrepreneur. You have built businesses. You have sold businesses. And you just mentioned that one of the values that you got from your dad is nothing makes up for the hard work. And you said the middle-class family that you were born into, finance and security played a very vital role. Take care of the finances, take care of the security for your family members. I'm just wondering, how did it impact your relationship with money? And how did you relook at that when you ventured into entrepreneurship?
So I am not a highly money motivated entrepreneur. I don't wake up with a greed side of me. I have to make more money. I just have to make more money. And that's not my driver. I like to make more money. It is how you measure success. At least here, you measure success. And I don't think because you're driving a beautiful red car, I need to get a nicer, beautiful red car. Those are different drivers. That's not me. But money is a driver in success. Success is my driver in that. And for me, very early in my career, my early 20s, after leaving accounting, I became an entrepreneur, and I never stopped. And then somewhere along the way, I've learned that one of the reasons I gravitated to being an entrepreneur is because I think I make a lousy employee. And I like being the driver. I like doing that. I laugh here in the States saying I would never buy a McDonald's franchise because I can make a better hamburger. Now, there's no doubt about it. It's a great franchise. You make a lot of money. You own 15 of them, your family is set forever with 15 McDonald's franchises. But because of the entrepreneur that likes to create and invent and drive and create from dust, that's my driver.
Wow.
That's what I wake up for. So I've started now 5 companies. This is my 3rd, 4th, and 5th that I'm running today. I started and sold the first 2. Inevitably, the same thing will happen, at least for number 3 and 4, that I'll sell those at some point. Number 5 is a charity. Every day I wake up thinking, how can we do better? What's the creation we can do that nobody's ever done? We can do it.
Yeah. This is so beautiful, Elliot, what you just mentioned, that it's important to take a pause and check what is your driver. If your driver is money, just to make more money and pick up another red color Cadillac, or to pick up another white color Mercedes or a silver color or a black color BMW, you can have 15 franchise of McDonald's. And if your driver is to create something or to innovate or to make a difference, it would have a very different manifestation in the world. You use this word that I am a family-centered person.
Correct.
How do you ensure that you continue to invest your time with your family, with the 5 companies running? Because I personally believe that if you want to make something successful, you have to invest there 100%.
You're 100% correct with that. I have to say that, Gaurav, that in the 1960s, the movement in the United States became you could have it all. Everything changed. You could have it all. That's the generation of the 60s. I could be a great entrepreneur, business owner. I could be a great moneymaker. I could be a great husband. I could be a great father. I could be great at a racquetball player and tennis player too. I could do all these things. And it was wrong. It was a terrible thing that happened on society because it ended up breaking up a lot of marriages in our country. And a lot of families got disjointed because of that. And I imagine it happened all over the world because you cannot do that. Now, all these ventures, family, work, parenthood, take time. They take energy, but they don't take the same amount of energy at the same time. You have to channel that. So when I'm being a father, my children are adults right now. I have grandchildren already. When I'm being a father or a grandfather, I'm in the moment. I'm here right now, being a grandfather to my grandson or grandchildren, being a parent to my children or stepchildren. I'm here. When I'm with my wife, I'm a husband. Now I'm on my second marriage, and they both were long-term marriages. I'm with my current wife. I've been with her for 20 years now, so this is not new. And she's divorced as well. And we understand that when we're together, we're together. We're not doing other things when we're together. We don't do boys' weekends, girls' weekends, so to speak. We don't go away for the sake of going away. Unless it's a business trip, we do that. If I have to do that, I have to do that. Be in the moment. At work, I come to work. I'm not going to be a great parent at work. I'm going to be the best I can be at work. My wife calls me sometimes during the day, and I've got to try to turn off work for 30 seconds or a minute and get in that. That's not an easy thing to do. Very hard to do. She knows it. She'll say, okay, I could tell I interrupted you.
It's so much of a relief listening to you, Elliot. It gives me hope. It gives me validation. Sometime back in India, one of the multi-billionaire entrepreneur made the statement that youngsters should work for 70 hours a week. Now, this gentleman started from a very humble background, continued to create an organization which is worldwide known. I'm sure you would know in Infosys. And Mr. Narayan Murthy said that you need to work for 70 hours. And when he made that statement, there was so much of turbulence in the corporate world. People started going in all direction that what he's saying is not making sense. He has lost it. He's aging. He does not know what he's talking about. And in my organization, I was talking to my team members. I said, he's absolutely correct, because without investing that kind of time and energy and hope, you cannot create something which is worth celebrating. If you ask me, what does that mean? I would say that, hey, every time when you are with your son, are you fully present there? Every time when you are with your team members, are you being fully present there? And my team member said, hey, Gaurav, what's your take on work life? I said, work life is a bullshit concept. That's what I said. I said, work life is a bullshit concept. The question is not whether you are investing 50% of your time at work and 50% of your time with your family. For me, are you being fully present with your family members when you are there? And I work like an ass at times. I personally believe what your dad said. Nothing makes up for hard work. I'm a firm believer of that. People say smart work is better than hard work. I say that's BS for me, because I'm not at all a smart worker. I hope every minute I'm at my office, I'm a smart worker. Look, I make more money than, let's say, the man who picks up my garbage. I respect what the garbage collector does. He works his butt off, picking up garbage, working hard, but his opportunity is not my opportunity.
So we ignore yours. So you have found an opportunity that you can work really hard at and receive
Yeah.
from money and remuneration and success at. So that has to go along with it as well. But when you're with your spouse and you're with your children, be with your spouse and children. When you're at work, be at work. So my day typically, Gaurav, and in the US, we call me a type A person. And I'm sure it's the same thing by you. Is it correct by you, A and B? Okay. So the A part of me, I don't need to be the boss and the driver in every minute of every day. Some type A people are like
Yeah.
that. Can't even be around them. They're obnoxious. But I start my day at 4:45 in the morning. And
Wow.
because I go to the gym. I work out and I'm at the office at about 7:30 to 20 to 8 in the morning. So I'm the first one in, and I've got, between my two companies, pretty close to $1 billion in assets. And I'm the first guy in here. I've got the most gray hair. I know I'm not the oldest person here, but I got younger people here and I'm beating them all in. And most times I beat them. Sometimes one person beats me. I leave at about 5:30. So I'm usually this first or second to last person to leave at the end of the day. I come home and then I begin with my wife our evening where I like to cook, and I cook our meals. She does the cleanup and takes care of that. I cook our meals, and then we have a nice bottle of wine and a nice meal and spend some time together. That's a long day. And all of those involve being in the moment differently. And so for me, and I wrote a book about this behind me called Driven by Elliot Kallan. I wrote a book that said, when you're doing something, do it well and do it only. But when you're not doing it, leave it alone and do what you're supposed to be doing.
I do understand what you're saying at the cognitive level. You are where you're supposed to be. But at times, it happens where I start to question life. And I'm sure you would have encountered those situations in your life.
Everybody does.
Where you started to question, is it worth chasing what I'm chasing? Is it worth doing what I'm doing? Is it worth living? To an extent, have you experienced the impermanence of life? Have you experienced that life is an illusion? It's Maya, it's useless. And then, if you did, how did you deal with that?
I don't think I've experienced that life is useless. We've got a charity that deals with depression for teenagers. That's almost a sign of depression, a phrase of depression. Life is useless. I'd worry about that path that it goes on is a very negative, dark path. I've never wanted to be on that path. But I think you wake up one day, and I think everybody does, and you feel like you're hitting your head against a wall. And you begin to wonder, is this the right thing to do? And then what you have to decide is, if it's not, then what can you do to change it? Because then that's okay. Change is sometimes very good. Or are you just going through a personal crisis? In the US, we call that midlife crisis. Do I need to get an earring and a tattoo and a blonde and a sports car? Do I need to do all those things because I'm bored and I'm feeling a little bit mortal and I'm feeling a little bit not as good as I should, or not as in the kind of shape as I should be in? And I'm projecting that to my work as well. It's okay to make changes. It's okay to second guess. It's okay to look in the mirror and say, I need to make changes, including at work, even in marriage, or how you treat your family.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's all okay to do that. And you should reflect on your life from time to time.
Yeah. So, Elliot, what was that moment in your life when you felt the heaviness of life, be it in your personal life, professional
I've had
life?
two major upsets in my world, in my personal life. I thought getting divorced was the worst thing in the world because I was so family centric. I was so upset at getting divorced. And I'm already divorced almost 23 years now. That was like the worst thing in my world. But I got through it, and I met a beautiful woman, and I met a lovely woman. And like I said, I'm with her 20 years. And if I don't get divorced and she doesn't get divorced, we don't get together because we met after that. We didn't have anything going before our marriage. So that good you could not have seen from what I thought was true ugliness of a divorce. But that pales or to having your son die. And I'm in a sad, small club of parents who send their child to college who commit suicide. My youngest son took his life.
Sorry.
Thank you. My youngest son took his life 8 years ago at the University of Montana. He was a sophomore, and he was on the road of depression, and that road that you just talked, the darkness, he ate him up, and he succumbed to that darkness. Losing a child is, I can't imagine, outside of your own personal tragedy of cancer or whatever you might be going through, but losing a child to suicide or to or an illness or whatever it is, because there's no comparison no matter what, is pretty horrible. And that dwarfs my divorce, and who cares about the divorce at the end of the day when you lose a child. And so I had to decide at that moment what my path was, because I was coming to work and I was staring at my computer screen because he's my screensaver. And I was president of a charity at that time that I made a commitment to be president of a charity for 2 years. And I was less than a year into my charity. A bigger part of me that said, I want to help other people, other families, not go through this devastation and destruction that we're going through. So I wanted to start a new charity, which we did, called A Brighter Day at abrighterday.info. That personal crisis has evolved to a beautiful orchard of charity, changing people's lives, but it doesn't change the whole that will be there for life, for losing a child. But it does help you know that you're changing lives every day because of that you're helping not to be a total victim. But when you are going through divorce and death and tragedy, you can easily become a victim of that. And you can succumb to being a victim of those tragedies. And then you're never the same person again.
Then you're never the same person again. I don't know if I can ever empathize what you're talking about, Elliot, but I'm really sorry to hear
Thank
to
you so
you.
much. When that happens, you've got to get some help, whatever that help is, because you have to get back into the now. And the now says, I could be better at what I do in spite of what's happened to me in the past, not forgetting what's happened to me, but better because of it.
Yeah. You know, Elliot, when one goes through such extreme darkness in their life, you know, just to share with you, one of my cousins lost 2 of his sons. Both of them drowned in an ocean. And every time when I meet them, I find that environment so gloomy, so dark, so heavy. I don't know if they've ever smiled after that. It's been 4.5 years. What I'm realizing is that when one goes through that kind of extreme darkness, either one becomes extremely bitter towards life, towards self. They might carry huge burden on themselves of guilt and grief. How did you deal with that?
I'm sorry for your cousin's loss and the whole family's loss. That's horrible. And by the way, I never compare reason of death of children. They're all created equal. They're horrible. To lose 2, it's a horrible thing. I think you're always going to be a victim of this loss. How you choose to be a victim is up to you, but you will be a victim in some kind. So at some point for your cousins, and I can't really give them advice, they are going to have to find a way to move on, and they will always be a victim of these losses of these 2 boys, because that loss doesn't go away. But how they deal with that loss will be up to them consciously and subconsciously. And there'll be moments that are just bad moments, birthdays, holidays, Thanksgivings, feasts, family feasts, that always bring back sadness. But there are other moments that you can embrace happiness and do something good with your loss. But not everybody chooses to do that. I hope they do, but it is, because it's horrible what happened. If they were here, I would get them some serious counseling, and because to get that grief somehow a little bit more out of their system, so that dark cloud that's over them right now that you feel begins to dissipate.
And Elliot, you mentioned that you will never be the same person. I'm just wondering, how did that change you as an entrepreneur, as a as a human being walking on earth, what changes have you noticed in yourself?
Well, that's a great question. You're asking for introspection, and I'll give you the one word that I think is the biggest change in me, and that's empathy. So empathy for others. I've always been an empathetic person. It's easy to be sympathetic. I mean, I'm sympathetic for the loss of those two boys. I can't really be empathetic because I have no skin in that game, but I can be sympathetic towards you. But I can be empathetic if something's grieving you and dealing with that. And I think what happens is when something negative happens in your life, like a child, it touches you in a way that you realize that you're just as human as everybody else. You're not better or worse. You're just as human. You put your pants on the same. That billionaire, successful billionaire with their company in Italy that said works 70 hours a week, puts his pants on the same way, goes to the bathroom the same way, gets sick with the flu the same way as you do, as I do. And once you realize that, then you can begin to get out of your own shoes and your own shadow and step in and help people in their shadow and their shoes. And that is being more empathetic. And I think if I were to look at the one change that I am more empathetic today to people suffering than I was just 10 years ago.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being so open in sharing this chapter of your life. You know, Elliot, I personally believe whatever little I have learned by interacting with different entrepreneurs, that a business goes through different phases. There are seasons in entrepreneurship when you start making money, when you are enjoying, and then there comes a time to either take an exit or hand it over that legacy to the next generation. Would love to hear from you. Having created 5 companies, 1 charity, what has been your experience?
Well, great question for the entrepreneur. Put on my other hat, the entrepreneur hat. I think there are 3 pillars or seasons, not 4, when it comes to being an entrepreneur. The first one is going to be the startup. People have dreams, people have visions. Not everybody should be an entrepreneur. But if you are going to be one, then understand that it's not going to come easy. And that is a common mistake, that easy is not in the rule book for being an entrepreneur. You shouldn't even consider that as a word to say, I wish this was easier. Don't ever say that. Because if it was easy, everybody does it. So the first one is I've got a startup. Startup is where that hard work, that opportunity, that everything energy-wise goes into that startup, the finding capital, maybe refinding capital. How am I going to pay bills this Friday? Who's emptying my garbage cans? How do we get product out the door? How do I get my service out there? Who's advertising? Who's marketing for me? Am I the only one doing that, or can I build a team around me? All these wonderful things, and it takes enormous amount of effort. It's like moving a ship from 0 to 20 knots. It takes all the effort in the world to do that. Once you're at 20 knots on a boat and you want to maintain 20 or go to 25 or 30, that's easy because you're already at 20 knots. But getting from 0 to 20, or a spaceship off the ground, to get a spaceship somewhere 3 feet off the ground takes almost 60% of the fuel.
Yeah.
It's amazing
And
that
a
happens.
huge amount of escape velocity.
You've got to understand, phase 1 is I'm going to be working my tail off to make it work and get my vision and maybe create that vision. And have that vision sometimes change because what you thought was vision A is really vision B, and you've got to bend and sweep and turn and bob and weave and do those things that entrepreneurs sometimes need to do. That's your first phase. Then the second phase of it, or second season of it, is now I've got something going. I got my boat going 20 knots in the water. I've got all the oars and I want to grow. I've got something worth keeping. I've got something worth looking at. I've got something here. Holy cow, I'm making money. You know, I'm making some money here. And so how do I continue to build that? Maybe nurture it, maybe expand with some new ideas, open up another division, turn my company from something small to something medium, and ultimately something large, if that's your dream. I want to grow. But that's phase 2, is I'm now in a really good spot and I'm growing or maintaining whatever my dream is. And I'm refining and redefining who I am all the time. I've got a little bit more time on my hands. I'm starting to take some vacations that I've always wanted. I'm going to this country and that country and traveling, and we're going out to nicer restaurants, and my kids are becoming teenagers now or in middle school, and I've got more money to go to these meetings. Your life is going from where it is to a much better place. That's phase two.
Yeah.
You still may need to have the things like recapitalization, more money. I mean, having employees is a huge challenge for an entrepreneur, huge challenge, because that's the toughest part, I think, of running a business is not the money, but the employees and HR and everything that's driving you nuts about people, the human capital. And then phase three is, wow, I'm now beginning to think I'm in my 60s. My kids are basically grown up. I'm getting a little older. Where's this going to go? What's my end point here? Do I even have an end point? Or am I going to be cleaning out the garbage cans at 75 years old because I've got nothing else to do? And I think that's the big phase. So I think in that phase, you begin to think about where is the company going? And if an entrepreneur, maybe I'll sell it. I've sold 2 companies. Maybe I'm going to put it up for sale. Maybe my children want to come in. And by the way, I want to tell you that it is almost always, well, not always, but almost always a bad idea to bring your children into your business. It's not always a bad idea. It works just a handful of percent. Most times, though, it blows up. And we tell everybody, if you really want to help your family out, sell the company and give your kids all the money. If that's how you want to do it. Because when you started this company, you emptied garbage cans, you did all these things. You know what your kids want most of the time? They want your life, not your effort, your life. They want the life now that you're going to the opera, to the sporting events, on vacations, enjoying some leisure time. They love that about you. But in the early part of your business, you had none of that. It just worked. And so you're thinking about what's the next step? Sell it, bring in my oldest child into the business, if that's the kind of business you have, the next generation, whatever it is. And what's my legacy? Is my legacy to my family that fact that I'm going to just leave them money? That's what you want it to do? Then that's great. Do I want to create a charity? Do I want to create a hospital with my name on a wing? Can I do that? Do I have the power to do that?
Wow.
That is legacy. And it's taking maybe your grandchildren, because your kids are now adults and maybe they have children, and teaching them something that you know that you've learned, and it will not make it to the next generation, but you can give it to that next generation in a way that only a grandparent can say.
Wow.
That's legacy.
Wow. Now, help me understand. Something that intrigued me is when you said that you should almost never hand over your business to your children. So from that perspective, Elliot, all the family-run businesses, and in fact, in India, we have got a lot of family-run businesses. And I do understand what you're saying, because I have seen the multi-millionaires handing over their businesses to their children and then wrapping up in almost zero. It just, the whole business I've seen getting collapsed. What is your POV when you say that we should never almost hand over the business? Why do you say so?
So if you're an entrepreneur and your goal is to grow your business, okay, open up other stores, expand distribution, expand manufacturing, to do that, that's a professionally run entity. When you're running small businesses, and India has a lot of small family businesses. The old United States had a lot of family-run businesses. Inner cities have a lot of family-run businesses. And if you have a child that wants to take that over, I think that's probably a pretty good idea. Because that's a different situation. At that family business, you've got a livelihood for your family. You're not into growth, you're into livelihood. You're not into expansion and distribution, you're into livelihood. That's very different. Then that's where whatever generation. My father was a butcher, I'm a butcher, my child's going to be a butcher. But if I'm growing and I want to create multiple distribution centers and manufacturing centers and global distribution, that's a different conversation that most next generation kids are not equipped to handle. That's what I'm talking about. There is a difference. I think if your family owns a lighting store in downtown Delhi and Mumbai, and that you're the second generation owning it, and it's got a nice little corner shop or a butcher shop or a hairdressing, that's a wonderful place to hand down business because you can continue it.
Elliot, a portion of the audience for this podcasts are coaches and consultants. What is your piece of advice to them that in case they would like to expand their business, what is it that they probably can do that could help them to expand their business to the very next level? And what are the possible challenges that they need to be mindful of?
I have hired personal coaches for me in the past. I'm a big fan of Anthony Robbins in the United States. I've done, if you know who he is, I've done Weekend of Destiny, and I walked on hot coals with him and all these other things. I'm a fan of coaches and motivators, and and I like that stuff. My brother, who's a partner at a law firm, hates that stuff. Hates it, just hates it. So I'm perfect for your people, because you've got to find me who's open to coaching. That's the first thing. You're a coach, I need to be open to a coach. And they're out there. Lots of entrepreneurs are out there, because I recognize that I have good, strong points, and I've got some weak points that may always be weak, but I have to deal with those. And they may be I don't want that to be my unraveling, because they're weak. So that's where a coach can help a lot. But I think a coach can teach great introspection and have me look inside and pull out my strengths, my core strengths, and grow and identify them, because it's hard to identify yourself. Because when you look in the mirror, what do you see? You see your beard, you see your hair, you see your neckline, you see your waistline. You see the superficial things that almost no one else cares about but you. And I'm just as guilty of that, by the way. Everybody is. But when somebody else looks at you, they say, there's a good person who's bright, got great character, great charisma. Boy, he could be doing this, this, and this. It takes another person to see that. That's what coaches can help you do. Then you can help me not brush you off as a coach by keeping my feet to the fire. So it has to be painful enough for me not to brush off what you're teaching me to do. That way I want to do it. Because all of us are motivated by success and the avoidance of pain. And sometimes it's one or the other.
No, as Anthony would say it, either you're moving towards pleasure or you're avoiding pain. Choose one for yourself. Elliot, help me understand. Being an entrepreneur yourself, having built businesses, sold businesses, you have gone through so many ups and downs in your life. You have encountered losses that 98% or more than that, they can't even imagine. What do you think? What are the myths that people have around entrepreneurship and life?
So the reason why people go and become entrepreneurs, it is different for lots of people. Sometimes they lost their job, and that's their only avenue. I can't be hired anymore. I'll start something myself. Sometimes they're the best engineer at work, and they think I could take this and start my own company. They think they're the best salesperson at work, and they want to start their own entity. That's a motivator, but that has nothing to do with your success. So one of the fantasies that they have is they think, because I'm the best salesperson, I should start my own company because that'll be easy. Because I'm the best engineer here, I should start my own company because that would be easy. So easy is the number one fantasy. That's not real. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. Your sleep patterns, your life, everything is disrupted if you want to be a driven person to be an entrepreneur. So if you're going to start something, then do some research on skill sets and understand your own skills that you need, because you're good at some things, you're okay at some things, and you're terrible at other things. And so you've got to capitalize on what you're really good at and hire people that can do things that you're not good at or terrible at, rather than try to get better at your worst things. Get better at your better things and hire people to handle your bad things and stay on them. So what I've learned along the line, and I sold a couple companies, is that it's not easy. It's hard work, it's toil, it's travails, it's running out of money, it's arguing with your spouse for 6 hours over money because all your money is invested in your company. and you're not liquid to buy anything, and dealing with that. And I think if you go in with your eyes open as an entrepreneur and understanding that every day will be a challenge and you're willing to rise to the challenge, you will get to it. You'll get through it. But you have to be willing to get through that because every day will be a challenge. And then don't melt down. Don't do stupid things. Don't go, you're running a business and then you go have an affair with somebody as a man. Don't do that. Your company could go out of business because you're not thinking with your brains. So do things that with forethought and consciousness, so you don't do the dumb things that we as humans sometimes let happen.
And the second thing that you mentioned is capitalize what you're really good at and hire people who can help you take care of the things that you're not good at. What are the other myths that people have around entrepreneurship that when you got into that got bursted for you?
I think when you create a product or a service and you know it's really good, you think everybody's going to buy it. And what you're forgetting is not only are they not interested in it, they don't even know you exist most of the time. So now what is going to be your plan, your marketing plan to bring your product or service to market? And that so people can understand what you're bringing to them and the value in it for them. Just because you make the fastest widget or the first widget or this doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it until they perceive their value. When you're creating something, create it with other people in mind and not with you in mind.
Yeah. Elliot, these days, if you look at everyone is talking about startups. Every second person is jumping into calling themselves a startup founder. What do you think? What is that illusion that the startup world has created around us that we are not understanding yet?
That's a great question. The two people that have been in startups in globally that come from the United States are Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
We know about those, Amazon and Facebook. And they are the front page and probably weekly or bi-weekly on every major news journal somewhere in the world. The Entrepreneur, Jeff Bezos just sold $5 billion of stock the other day. People come in with the fantasy that I am going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. And yes, those two are wildly successful. Jeff Bezos wasn't so successful for a long time. He just sold books for a long time. Amazon was a book company before it was what we know of it today. Mark Zuckerberg, on the other hand, just created something in college that he thought would be fun to communicate with his friends. And it took off. It was an accident. Versus Jeff Bezos, that was very conscious effort all the time. But people wake up and they forget that most businesses and most entrepreneurs are not Jeff Bezos and don't enjoy the success of Mark Zuckerberg. They enjoy a fraction of that and many times fail. And so the word startup people in startups think, I'm going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. They do. I'm going to be next Google. There's one Facebook out there right now. There are not 100. There's one. And that's the world we're in right now, is that 24/7 news says, I could be the next Mark Zuckerberg because I've got a great product. And you don't need to be, it's great if that's what you end up being and that's what you want to be, but you could be really great at what you do at a level that you can be great at without being at their level.
Yeah. But Elliot, I think it's a natural tendency to continue to dream that I would like to be the next Bezos or I would like to the next Mark Zuckerberg. I think it's a natural feeling to compare yourself with others.
It is. We're humans. We do that. That's why whatever car you drive, I want a bigger one. Because that's how we compare.
How can one continue to tame that side of self and continue to nurture the dreams that they have so that I can continue to keep my heart at the right place? And I should not get distracted from the path that I've chosen for myself. I don't know if is it making sense, the question?
Sure it is, and I want to answer that dreams are amazing. Dream big is one of the core components of success, is to be a big dreamer. I have it, you have it, entrepreneurs have a dream. They all do. That's why they become entrepreneurs, because they did, in their mind, they put a dream together. And wanting to be big and wanting to be a certain size is a wonderful dream. So let me give you what has to happen. And there are two roads of dreamers. There's a road of reality that says, I'm going to put my feet firmly on the ground, put in place my systems, keep refining them all the time, and build and grow. And then one day get to the point of going public or selling or whatever that is. That's the path of many dreamers. And then there's the other path, the fantasy path. They talk a big storm and do nothing. And you and I both know people in our circles who are always talking big and doing nothing. And they're also criticized for thinking big because it didn't work for them. And you've got to, as an entrepreneur, if your feet aren't firmly on the ground, then all you are is a dreamer. You're just a dreamer. And if you don't have any dreams, then your entity is not going to get to the next level. It's a balance. You can see the balance. There's a balance that I've got to dream big and execute well at the same
And
time.
continue to paddle as well. It's not that I'm sitting on the steering wheel and I don't put the ignition on and I stop paddling it. So for as long as I have a dream, I need to continue to invest my time, energy, and everything possible. Elliot, at this point in time, if you were to look back in your life and give a piece of advice to your 20-year-old self, when you would have probably started dreaming your first company, what advice would you offer to yourself with all the wisdom and the experience that you have accumulated for yourself today?
That's a great question. I think my first advice to my 20-something-year-old self would be understand your skill set. Understand it, grow with it, hire where you're not strong. Because when you're in your 20s, you're invincible and you think you're good at everything. And you're not. You're only human. But in my 20s, like so many people in their 20s, I didn't accept the certain facts about myself, and it hurt me in certain ways and set me backwards. And I had some valuable, painful learning lessons, what I call getting punched in the nose. You know, in the movie, the Rocky series with Sylvester Stallone, somewhere in there, he's explaining, I think, to his son that it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. And I imparted my children with that phrase all the time. You're going to get knocked down. Staying down is an option. Getting back up is your choice. And learn from it. So that's the key. You're going to be knocked down as an entrepreneur. You're going to be. You're going to run out of money. You're going to run out of time. Your personal life's going to start suffering. You're going to need to do certain things in your life to keep it in balance. And you're going to get your nose bloodied from time to time. It's okay to get a bloody nose, to get punched in the nose. Just get back up. Perseverance is a wonderful foray for an entrepreneur. It really is.
Get up and keep going. Elliot, thank you so much for your time. I think it was an absolute delight listening to you, listening to your experiences, the lessons that you have learned from your life.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. Thank you.